things being equal, Nigerians are now set to enjoy some respite following the decision of Dangote refinery to slash the price of premium motor spirit or petrol from 890 naira to 825 naira per litre, a reduction of 65 naira per litre. For the second time this month, the price of petrol has been reduced following a previous reduction of 60 naira on February the 1st. The ex-depot price has changed from 950 naira per litre in January to the current price of 825 naira per litre, bringing it to a total reduction of 125 naira per litre within 26 days. A statement released by Dangote Petroleum Refinery said the price reduction is intended to provide essential relief to Nigerians. Energy expert and co-founder of Dairy Hills, Kelvin Emmanuel, joins us now to discuss those changes in pricing and their potential impact on the retail side of the downstream sector, competition and supply stability. Great to have you on Newsday. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much, Temitope. Thanks for having me.
So how do you think Dangote Refinery's pricing strategy will impact the overall stability of the Nigerian fuel market?
Yeah, very, very important question you asked. And this goes against the, allegations and, statements that has been made since last year about the tendency for monopoly, because if you have a situation where he intends to monopolize the markets, he will not be reducing prices. What you're seeing basically is that the positive cracking margins from him hitting 600,000 barrels capacity utilization, because he has hit 600,000 barrels capacity, is beginning to kick in. Despite the fact, Temitope, that he imported about 12 million barrels of crude at about 600,000 barrels per day for 30 days for the month of February, because if you look at the sheets for allocation, NNPC is not under the crude, Naira-based crude swap is not giving more than 62,000 barrels per day, So what you're seeing basically is that if you look at the price, the ex-gate price, the premium that is added by the refiner at gantry, the NMDPRA levy, you look at the inspection fee, the NMDPRA levy is about $9.99 per metric ton, and each metric ton has about 1,341 naira per liter, 1,341 liters. Inspection fee, 97 cents. If you look at the margin for distribution, about $15. And I believe, Temitope, that listen, if the Nigerian government can, move its multi-product pipeline infrastructure, especially the distribution side, from a closed loop where the government, NNPC, owns all the pipes, to an open access where it concessions those pipes to private companies to operate and manage, that distribution fee is going to drop from $15, which is the minimum, to anywhere around $2 or $3 per metric ton, and that will impact on the prices. It's my view that the cost of distribution, depending on the region, in the southwest is at least 14 naira per liter. The cost of distribution to the northwest and the northeast is anywhere from between 26 naira per liter and above. The cost of distribution to the Niger Delta is anywhere between 14 naira and 20 naira per liter. And what Dangote is doing now is that he's assuming the role of government, what Petroleum Equalization Fund was doing when he set up the PEF Act in 1975 and 1978, if I'm not mistaken. And he's bearing that cost of equalization of the price of petrol across different regions because of the cost of distribution of petrol across different regions, and because the government has not provided infrastructure to evacuate PMS out of a refinery, which should not be the business of a refiner, like it's done in other parts of the world. So basically with the price drop, you're seeing that the positive cracking margins are kicking in because of economies of scale, and he's basically, has had to dissociate from Platts, because if you're going to price the petrol he sells based on the Platts standard, the price of petrol will not be at 825 naira per liter ex-gate. It will be way higher than that.
All right, Kelvin. This should be a nice reprieve, hearing this kind of news to Nigerians. But I kind of sense, and the body language of importers and oil marketers, they do not like to hear things like this, because like you just said in your last statement, some of these prices look deflated. they want it to go up. And talk to us about the dynamics of having this in place and also having the oil marketers probably pushing for something a little bit higher that they feel is equitable and more or less probably we paying what they feel is the actual cost of doing business in Nigeria.
Aaron, thank you very much. So this is exactly what it means when the World Trade Organization talks about countervailing, veiling, and dumping, you know, and the tendency for markets to be captured by cartels. And then they result in what they call oligopoly, where a group of people come together and decide that this is the price at which we're going to price it, even if the factors that goes into the pricing mechanism does not quite align. You know, so what they are saying basically that Dangote should raise the price of petrol back up at the detriment of Nigerians. Nigerians are crying for lower petrol prices because petrol affects inflation, you know, and it eats into their costs. And when inflation goes up, the cost of living goes down. You can see that the per capita income dropped from above $30,000 10 years ago to below $900 in 2025. You know, any Nigerian listening to us will be shocked that the petrol importers are saying that Dangote should raise the petrol price back up, and it's equitable for them, you know, because their landing price is higher than what he's selling. Look, they are welcome to competition. This is what competition is. And by the way, I should mention to you, Aaron, sections 317, 7 to 11 talks about the fact that when a refiner, the domestic market achieves full refining capacity that is enough to supply the daily demand of Nigeria, the regulator is supposed to withdraw those import licenses, number one. Number two, Aaron, sections 317.11 talks about the quality of sulfur of the petrol they bring into Nigeria. The question we should ask today is the regulator, NMDPRA, are they doing their job? Do they have a lab? Do they test the products that are brought in? The AFRI 1 and AFRI 5 standards. What is the actual price? If you do a process audit of the quality of petrol, because in the international markets, in the global markets, Aaron, the price of petrol depends on the quality of the petrol, for density, for sulfur, for distillation level, for diesel, for flash point. Yeah, and the flash point recommended for diesel consumed in Nigeria, they say should not be less than 66 degrees centigrade. So the question you should ask, the quality of petrol they are bringing into Nigeria, if you put it in a lab and you test for all these metrics I've mentioned, the price at which they say they are landing, does it match up? Is it lesser? And if it's lesser, are they quoting premium prices in the market and landing at cheaper costs for wider margin of profits? Is the aversion to lifting petrol directly from Dangote because it's more profitable to import cheaper petrol that doesn't meet up with the premium landing price they are quoting to the Nigerian markets because the margins are wider? And if you take petrol from a refiner, you do the actual business of downstream with very high volume and thinner margins? Is that the reason why? These are the questions that the regulators is supposed to ask. The issues is supposed to call a roundtable on the stakeholders in the industry, considering that you have a midstream sector that has only just come on since last year because Dangote started the refinery in Lagos.
Now, earlier you talked about petrol price affecting inflation, and I'm wondering how significant really is the impact of this price reduction on the average Nigerian consumer's cost of living?
Petrol prices are very significant. You can see very well, if you watch the trajectory for the inflation rate, you can see that between 2023, when the government floated the markets and adopted a managed float and went from a fixed spec system of plus or minus 30 naira per day, the inflation rate went up significantly. Based on the old formula for computation for the CPI basket, the cost price index basket that the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics were using, I think food constituted anywhere around 61%, if I'm not mistaken. Energy constituted anywhere around 19% to the basket. So you're looking at anywhere around a fifth or a quarter of the the contribution to the CPI basket for inflation. Petrol prices are very significant. And the fact that you're beginning to see a situation where there's a downward review of petrol prices also because the Naira is beginning to stabilize from, the establishment of the MFM market, Nigerian Foreign Exchange Market, migration from managed flow to MFM, the compliance of the banks with the harmonization of reporting on net open position, which is very important. And I'll explain this to you. Listen, last year, January, the central bank had issued a circular to domestic money banks in Nigeria, deposit money banks in Nigeria, and said that they should comply with harmonization of reporting on net open position, which means that several banks in Nigeria, tier 1 banks mostly, were holding $5 billion onshore in FX for speculative reasons. And this was affecting the exchange rate and it was distorting the markets. And the fact that they've complied with that by the CBN adopting what they call a bill matching system that Bloomberg manages on behalf of the central bank has created transparency and led to compliance on long positions for those. And you've seen like FPI volume increase and you see the Naira beginning to gain value. That is also affecting the refiner because the stronger Naira and lower crude prices is definitely going to lead to lower petrol prices per metric ton, both for ex-gate price and the premium the refiner adds on the cost per metric ton.
All right, Kelvin, permit me to take you back just one step to your former statement. Then I'll talk about something. The reason, so first of all, the whole Dangote refinery coming alive has brought more questions than answers in the minds of the final consumers. Because first of all, when they were sampling the products, no one had ever seen actual refined product that pure and that colorless in their lives. And people questioned that, so what were we consuming in our cars in the first instance? And when you put that side by side with that particular experiment that has gone viral on social media with a man buying PMS from MRS and buying PMS from NNPC, that has literally almost set social media and the petroleum industry on fire in terms of the density and what the pricing should be. Talk to us about how all this, shouldn't we know that, okay, probably that the reason why we're paying this much is because of the purity of what we are getting, because premium petrol costs more than, permit me to use the word, diluted petrol, PMS, so to speak. And also put it side by side. Is it not time to probably harmonize the market for us to return to some sense of subsidy to help calm the market down and help balance the market before we move further? Because right now it's looking very volatile. Talk to us about these two indices.
Aaron, so, I watched that experiment like every other person did. It was quite interesting because even if the experiment was not done with witnesses and in a controlled environment, the young man tried. He's a content creator trying to drive views to his YouTube channel. That's what content creators do. They're trying to drive views and earn money from Google, YouTube. It exposed certain questions on the air-to-fuel ratio. Air-to-fuel ratio simply talks about density of air to fuel in per liter of petrol and the durability and how fast the petrol burns because of the AFR. The standard AFR recommended, there are set limits because you see the petroleum sector is a very strictly regulated. The conditions for regulations are very stringent all over the world. There's a specific AFR ratio that is set by regulators all over the world. So what he did in an uncontrolled environment without witnesses, basically, and without the methodology applied by American Society for Testing and Materials, is conduct an experiment on how long per liter of petrol lasts. By the way, that petrol didn't come from Dangote because, there's evidence that within the first 2 weeks of February, which has not been disputed by the authorities, that NNPC imported 213.2 million liters of petrol, So this comes to the question, and this comes to what I've always said. I've always said this, that NMDPRA, the regulator, is asleep. And the regulator is asleep because when you look at the gazette they issued based on the PIA, it says that if, for example, they refuse to comply with a law that was written by the government themselves and withdraw the import licenses because the petrol produced in Nigeria is more than the domestic consumption on a daily basis, they are supposed to collect a sample of the petrol from whatever vessel is arriving in Nigeria after vessel arrival notification fee is paid and test at their lab. So the first question you're going to ask, Aaron, is, does NMDPRA have a standard lab that meets up with ASTM standards? I have not seen. Why have they refused to conduct a third-party Robin roundtable, bring all the players in the market and test their products and see that it meets with 50 ppm sulfur? For diesel, see that it meets up with the flash point of 66 degrees centigrade, and it's either 66 and above or not. Why have they refused to do it? When NNPC said, according to their claim, when they said that Port Harcourt and Warrior was working, which I don't think it is, when they started, why did they refuse to take a sample from NNPC and put it through ASTM methodology or standards and test the product to see if it meets up with the regulatory standard? So it just points to the fact that the NMDPRA is sleeping, is docile, it's not working, and they fail to comply with the law that the government wrote, considering they are a regulator. On the question you asked about subsidy, I don't think subsidy is the key. You see, when markets becomes efficient, competition leads to lower prices.
All right,
players compete
Kelvin,
based on prices. I don't think.
Apologies, I set you on this motion, but we've unfortunately run out of time. This is a very interesting discussion. I wish we could expand on this very much, but well, unfortunately, run out of time. I want to say thank you very much for joining us. Certainly, this is an ongoing conversation that we'll still be having.